This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
One of the things I realize is people don't just grow apart. There's always more to it. Guys, what's going on? Welcome to the Bird Brain Podcast, where the goal is to rise above it all, stay elevated, and create that infinity up your you. That one sounded weird. I'm going to do that over. Guys, welcome to the Bird Brain Podcast, where the goal is to rise above it all, stay elevated, create that infinity up your you. Let's go. I'm your host, Isaiah, and how are you guys? How are you doing? How's your spirit? How's your heart? Check in. How's your headspace, right? How's your motivation? How's your progress? How are you doing overall? What's that like? It's been such a interesting couple of weeks for me. Intuitively, even my health has been kind of in this wild ride. And I mean, progressively getting better, but also like getting sick. And, coming out of it, it's so funny, like, as adults, one of the things I always say is, like, I don't have time to get sick. Legit don't. There's so much I have to do. But, sometimes your body will remind you in one way or another that, hey, we need to slow down. We have needs. There's something going on. We got to take care of you because you have not been on it. Or it's just something's happening, like something's in the air, and that's just what it's been for me. But I remember, last week, I think there was one day I could finally just wake up and feel good. And I literally said, I was like, man, thank you. It's like, thank you. It felt so good to just have my energy in a space where, I could open my eyes, go through the day, get done what I needed to get done, and just feel better, feel better. And that's when you're in a space where it's just like, man. But that's not what today's episode is about, funny enough. It's kind of like this concept or this thing that I hear a lot people say, where somebody will say, well, we just grew apart. You hear it with friendships a lot, actually. Relationships, not so much, because I feel like people try a little bit harder to sustain those romantic partnerships, right? People will fight to the nail, ask questions, they're very persistent, whatever. But with friendships, you hear, oh yeah, well, we just grew apart. And a lot of times I realize that is not the full truth. It's not the full truth. It's not that people grew apart. There was just no growth applied to the relationship, right? There was a level of neglect, or there is a realization of certain things, right? Or there could be, a mismatch in terms of compatibility. But I can guarantee you more often than not, when people say we just grew apart, there was a lack of effort and care applied to growing the relationship. Damn near every single time, I'd bet money on it. And the reason why I say that is because when we look at how people navigate life and how people prioritize things in life. I say this all the time. Friendship is one of those things that is treated like a buffer, or something that, I'll get around to when I want to get to it, or when I'm feeling a need for something, or when I am feeling lonely or whatever. And it's like, but then by that point, there's so much guilt, right? Or, you know, well, I haven't heard from them, so I'm not going to reach out to them either. But there's usually a root cause. If we are honest with ourselves in terms of certain relationships, there's usually a root cause why there is no longer a relationship. And sometimes people just don't want to admit, hey, I haven't made any effort, and my ego is in a way or my pride is in a way, right? And then sometimes you do have those relationships where it's like you are making certain changes and adjustments, and you may recognize that another person may not be happy for you or may not support those changes because it requires them to grow, right? And or it requires them to take a kind of look at themselves. And once you start taking care of yourself, yes, there will be changes that you feel, right? However, I don't believe that people just grow apart. Like it's not something that happens in the air where the temperature drops and now there's like a snap freeze and the relationship just dies. Especially if these are people that you're close with and you have some kind of bond with. There has been something that happened either one time or multiple times that kind of didn't take care of the relationship in a way that it needed to. There's this concept I've heard called death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? And what it means is that there are constant minor offenses that continuously happen over a period of time. And it doesn't mean like it happens every single day. It could just mean that, okay, a prime example is, well, every time I call this person, they seem to be too busy and they never, really return on that. Or every time, I make plans with this person or try to make plans, they never stick to it, right? Something always falls through, or there's something always in the works elsewhere or whatever. And a person starts to notice that, right? And even if they don't vocally express it, internally, there starts to be a change there, okay? There's kind of like the fire starts getting put out. You know what I'm saying? And eventually a person will realize and recognize, okay, I don't feel cared for in this relationship, and maybe I can have a conversation. Yeah, let's have a conversation. And then they notice that doesn't really change anything. Why? Because the person is so fixated or prioritizing other things. Compatibility is a very real thing. Okay?
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouthwatering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
When we actually think about what it takes to really be compatible with someone, especially in our adult lives, okay? Because if your value system is set up a certain way, it's very interesting to find somebody who aligns with the values, not even doing the same thing. Okay, I was looking at my relationships. There's the talk of like, find people who like to do the same thing or whatever. And that's your core group. The funny thing about it is the people in my life, each of them, they're all the same on a moral level. However, they all have different interests. And I have very different interests. So it's like we will align on certain interests and then we won't, right? They may enjoy doing certain things that I don't enjoy. I might enjoy doing certain things that they don't enjoy or even think about. And that's cool. It's dope. But we kind of meet in the middle where there's a common interest, but more than anything, there's a common value system. And that's the most important. And when we talk about relationships that just grow apart, the value system, take a look at the value system because something is there in that information. There's always a reason why a relationship just kind of fails, especially with friendships. I can't tell you how many times people will try their hardest to sustain a romantic partnership, knowing that it does not have the growth or the expectations or it meets the needs of one person or another. But people will still fight to the death to sustain those connections. However, When it comes to the friendship aspect, you hear a lot of times, oh yeah, we just grew apart. You just grew apart? Or did you stop applying effort? Or did somebody realize that there was a lack of effort? Okay. Or was it a realization that, oh, this friendship was based on proximity, convenience? Okay. There's always a reason. If you were very close with somebody, you don't just fall out of care with them. You don't just fall out of love with your friendships. It doesn't just happen. Okay. And I find a lot of times people who say that are the ones who are, in some way, shape, or form, responsible for not applying any effort. It's an observation that I've noticed. This isn't just me making assumptions, but it's truly an observation that I've noticed. Because a follow-up question would be like, well, have you reached out? Did you try to figure it out? What was going on? No, I got too busy and I, just been busy with life and everybody's got life going on and I don't want to. And so it becomes this thing. And that's when you start to realize our relationships will reflect back how we care for them. Every single time. Our relationships will reflect back how we care for them. And we all have responsibility, right? And the reason I say that is this, because even if you are the type of person that is invested in relationships and you realize on the receptive end that there's no care on the receptive end, you realize that there's just no effort in return. Well, what happens? You eventually stop showing up to that relationship, right? However, I could tell you this, sometimes people realize, or a lot of times people realize whether or not you were caring about them or not. People know. People know how you make them feel. People know how you attribute to their feelings. It's no mystery around that. We are creatures of connection, so therefore, we are going to understand and recognize and feel, even on a visceral level, if we don't have the words for it, whether or not a relationship has been good to us or if it's been a hindrance. Okay? I've seen relationships last for years and people be very unhappy, but they last because people are still trying to figure it out and fight for it. But the whole, well, we grew apart thing, that's not true a lot of times. There was a lack of growth. That's what happened. Sometimes we realize that adult relationships require adult effort and people are not willing to make that. Instead of them saying that, it just becomes this very passive thing of like, well, yeah, I don't really care to sustain a relationship. And when the other person tries, there's always something until they stop trying. Now it's like, oh, well, this person, they don't reach out. They just stop reaching out. I stopped hearing from them. Well, have you reached out to them? We have so much responsibility in our relationships, period. We really do. We really do. And sometimes we don't want to look like the perpetrator in terms of things not progressing. However, every relationship always has information of our effort. Every relationship. And whether or not we want to admit it, our relationships will still reflect some level of truth in terms of what we've done. Every single time. Every single time. We cannot have both. We cannot have good relationships that we don't take good care of, period. You just can't. It's not going to happen. You cannot have good relationships that you don't take good care of, period. Okay, there's no real workaround for that. There's no cheat code. Okay. And we need to accept that as adults, right? If you want a relationship to work, you are going to have to put in some work. Otherwise, yeah, you can say, yeah, we grew apart. And sometimes that happens, but it happens in a ways of, yeah, there's a lack of compatibility, or this person doesn't seem to be supportive of me in my growth process, or I'm not supporting this person, right? Or there's a level of jealousy there, or there's a level of resentment there that's not being spoken about. There's always a root cause to why relationships, especially friendships, dissipate. They don't just happen. And if they do happen that way, that means that there was a lack of care for the relationship to begin with. Okay? Every single time. Every single time. So this is just like the quick and dirty, and I want you guys to really think about what level of effort are you applying to your relationships? How intentional are you about your relationships, right? What do you desire? What are you putting forth? Because you will not have good relationships that you don't take good care of, period. All right. Coaching is available. I'm accepting clients. The link is in the description of this episode. Sign up. I think that's about it. If you ordered a coloring book, I am getting the orders in. It's been a big shipment, so they're coming, and as they come, I'm sending them out. So thank you guys for your patience, all right? But in the meantime, I really hope you guys take care of yourselves, and I really hope you take care of each other, all right? Take flight.